What's going on, guys, and welcome to another episode of Smash JT. And if you would see what's on the screen right now, it's finally happening. Game studios are going to be banned from selling loot boxes to minors under a new bill that's been proposed. And this is something that it's been a long time coming for. It's something I've talked about for a while now, and it seems like, this fell to the ESRB, the ratings board, and they just kept kicking the can down the road saying, oh yeah, we'll take care of that. We'll check it out. We'll see what we can do. And, it just was pretty clear that the ESRB was in the back pocket of the game companies. Hell, I've made videos about the ESRB and how corrupt they are and how the head of that organization formerly worked for Disney, who also hired EA to work for Star Wars. It was just an interesting convolution of a bunch of people working together, and their best interest in mind was making money, not the consumer. So what's happening right now, what's transpired is the government is starting to officially get involved. This is something that a senator from Hawaii, was trying to pass a bill last year, and it kind of just fell flat. Nobody really moved forward with it. And then other areas of the world were starting to ban loot boxes, selling to minors. But this one here, it just seems like it has more of a chance to pass just based off of the direction it's going and what it actually says in the bill. So I'm going to go through a couple of articles here, one from The Verge and one from Kotaku. Jason Schreier, who I respect a tremendous amount. I know a lot of YouTubers out there may not. I actually appreciate his hard work and dedication to finding out a lot of background information in the game industry. So starting with The Verge, this is from McKenna Kelly today, May 8th. On Wednesday, Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri announced that he would be introducing a bill banning manipulative design features in video games with underage audiences, including the sale of loot boxes. Now, this is something initially comes to mind. EA, Warner Brothers, hell, even Activision, Blizzard, Ubisoft, tons of AAA publishers that take full advantage of minors selling loot boxes. Fortnite from Epic, Overwatch, so many games these days that are marketed towards kids and basically are selling loot boxes to as many of them as they can. They are in for a world of pain once this actually goes through, assuming it does. The legislation would, if approved, prohibit the sale of loot boxes in games targeted at children under the age of 18. Games marketed toward wider audiences could also face penalties from regulators like the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, if companies knowingly allow children to purchase these randomizing crates. So this right here, this brings up a ton of questions for me. First off, how are they going to limit it to children under the age of 18? How are they going to restrict that to not letting them purchase things if their parents' credit card is on the account, things like that? How are they going to decipher what game is marketed towards kids compared to wider audiences? Who's going to be the one deciding that outcome? There's a lot of questions up in the air with this that make it very hard to implement. But assuming they figure all that background information out, it is going to completely shift the dynamic of the video game industry as we know it. Right now, the game industry has been trending towards free-to-play games and making money off of hooking people and turning it into a gambling system and trying to make as much money as possible off of every single player. Apex Legends, Fortnite, Overwatch, you name it, they got it. Social media and video games prey upon user addiction, siphoning our kids' attention from the real world and extracting profits from fostering compulsive habits. No matter this business model's advantages to the tech industry, one thing is clear. There is no excuse for exploiting children through such practices. Wow. Okay. So that is a very powerful statement. I don't really need to add anything to it because what it says is pretty straightforward. Basically saying these companies are taking full advantage of the kids. Won't somebody please think of the children? Regulators would determine whether a game is targeted at minors by considering similar indicators that they already use under the Child's Online Privacy Protection Act, the COPPA. Subject matter and the game's visual content would help regulators determine who the game is marketed towards. Okay, so that is an answer to my first question, but it still isn't an exact science. It's still a bunch of people that are just deciding based off of what they think the game is marketed towards or who the user base is, even though that doesn't mean every single person playing the game is of a certain age. It's just saying the general population of players in that world are most likely either children or adults. Pay-to-win mechanics in games targeted at minors would also be outlawed under this legislation. This includes progression systems that encourage people to spend money to advance through the game's content at a faster pace. Woo! Okay, so I am very excited about this on the surface, but I need to temper my excitement because there are a lot of concerns with this. First off, this is the government getting involved with video games, and that, for those of us who have been around long enough to see what happened back in the days of Mortal Kombat and Night Trap and how legislation was trying to handle that, creating the ESRB, and how they thought games meant one thing when they really weren't. It's just people who don't play games making rules for people who do play games, and that is not ever a good situation. With that being said, though, it does seem, at least on the surface, that this bill is attacking all the problem areas with the video game industry currently and how the games are being marketed to the wrong audiences to take full advantage of them. Though it doesn't alleviate the concern that just because you're not a kid anymore doesn't mean you can't get addicted to something, and that's concerning as well. But then again, gambling's legal, so as long as you're of age, that's the way they're going to be looking at this. These games are often available for free, and certain levels or tasks are more easy to overcome with stronger weapon or the ability that can be obtained through microtransactions. It would also apply to multiplayer games that empower players who spend more on microtransactions to more easily compete against those who wouldn't. That hasn't been so much of an issue lately. I feel like the game industry at large has moved away from the pay-to-win type scheme. I mean, yes, there are still plenty of games that do that, but they're more focused in the mobile phone area for that. As far as games on consoles and what people have been dealing with, mostly it's just microtransactions and cosmetic items that are taking advantage of people that want to stand out and look cooler than other people, which I'm sure some of you watching this would say, I don't want people regulating what I'm allowed to buy and what I'm not, which is exactly what this is going to be doing. People don't want the government getting involved with video games. Get mad at the ESRB because they had the chance to make it right, and instead they turned the other cheek to make the companies more money. Kick the can down the road, and now here we are. When a game is designed for kids, game developers shouldn't be allowed to monetize addiction, Hawley said. And when kids play games designed for adults, they should be walled off from compulsive microtransactions. Yeah, they should be, but I can't, at least off the top of my head, think of a way to do that and implement it properly and make sense of it. Game developers who knowingly exploit children should face legal consequences. Wow, that is a bomb drop, and the first company that comes to mind is EA. That's got to be a good feeling for a lot of gamers that are hating on how companies have been treating the industry recently. Loot boxes and microtransactions are prominent features in mobile phone games, but the trend has made its way into big budget games like Overwatch, PUBG, FIFA, from AAA studios like Blizzard, EA. Fortnite sold loot boxes for some time in its Save the World mode, but they were removed earlier this year. These new rules would be enforced by the FTC, which has already reportedly opened an investigation into the sale of loot boxes after Senator Maggie Hassan from New Hampshire questioned the commissioners over the practice last fall, which I made a video about previously. In a February letter, FTC Chairman Joe Simmons would not confirm the existence of an investigation, but he told Hassan that the commission would hold a series of workshops with both consumer advocates and the game industry on loot boxes later this year in 2019. State attorneys general would also be empowered under these new rules to file suits against gaming companies on behalf of the residents of their states on issues like loot box sales. If you want to take a quick diversion from this article, I want to point to just how much money these companies have been making off of microtransactions and loot boxes. Here's an article from CNBC on January 31st, 2018. Wall Street is giddy over EA's surging microtransactions profits, despite horrific Star Wars game sales. They have been making so much money, especially off of FIFA, that it is disgusting. And if this bill goes into effect, it is going to completely shift the entire dynamic of the video game industry as we know it. This is fantastic news, and honestly, unfortunately, the only way it would happen is with government intervention because EA is in the back pocket of the ESRB. Outside of these actions by and interactions with the FTC, US officials haven't acted as aggressively on loot boxes as regulators abroad. Last year, the Belgian Gaming Commission ruled that loot boxes fall under the jurisdiction of its gambling laws, which they should because that's what they are. No matter how much the ESRB tries to tell you that it's not, it is. They just want to keep it going as long as possible because they are making money. And I wouldn't be surprised if there were some cash exchanges that were found out to be taking place between major AAA publishers and the ESRB to make sure this was on the up and up in their eyes. Concern spread across Europe, and this pushed studios like Blizzard and EA to pull the sale of loot boxes from their games in those countries. So guess what? Oh my god, would you believe it? It's possible to make a game without the loot boxes. And they're still fun? Who'd have thought? Throughout his first few months in the Senate, Hawley has cast critical eye on social media companies and how they maintain user privacy, especially belonging to children. In March, Hawley teamed up with the author of COPPA, Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts, to introduce updates to the children's privacy law that would allow parents to delete the data companies have on their children under 15 years of age. This guy, I don't even know this dude, Josh Hawley, but I am loving him. He is doing what has needed to be done in the video game industry for years. We're talking, God, 8, 9 years? How long have microtransactions been infesting the video game industry at large? Looking over at the Kotaku article, it's going to be very similar with Hawley talking about the Children's Privacy Act and protecting the children from abusive games. And when a game is designed for kids, game developers shouldn't be allowed to monetize addiction, like I said in the Verge article. A lot of these say exactly the same thing. But I do want to focus on the pressures that games like Middle-earth Shadow of War from Warner Brothers and Star Wars Battlefront 2, which really shook the entire industry from EA on taking advantage of the consumers, how this is completely shifting the entire dynamic of the video game industry at large. And here we go, an update. The Entertainment Software Association, the video game industry lobbyist group, sent over a statement shortly after this bill was introduced. Okay. Oh, this is like the tobacco lobbyists. Cigarettes aren't that bad for you. Let's see what they say. Numerous countries, including Ireland, Germany, Sweden, Denmark, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, determined that loot boxes do not constitute gambling. We look forward to sharing with the Senator the tools and information the industry already provides that keep the control of in-game spending in parents' hands. Parents already have the ability to limit or prohibit in-game purchases with easy-to-use parental controls. So they are taking the angle of don't take the power away from the consumers, which is smart. From their perspective, I don't blame them because it makes it look like the government is going to ruin things, which they typically, let's be honest, have the history of doing. If you give them an inch, they take a mile. But unfortunately, like I said, because it's come to this point, unfortunately, I'm on board with the government stepping in. The video game industry at large cannot handle this. They have proven time and time again that they have no idea how to be good advocates for the consumer. All they care about is making as much money as possible. So the video game industry lobbyist group can talk as much as they want about why people should still have power and decide what they want to spend money on. But if you take the ability away from the game companies to take advantage of the consumer with microtransactions, they would go back to the days of making video games as good and as fun as possible instead of making the focus centralized around the idea of how we can extract money out of the consumer by making a game, by making a monetary system based on the foundation of microtransactions. Anyways, I'm going to leave the video right there, but holy crap, we got One hell of a bomb drop today from the U.S. Senate. Let me know what you guys think about this situation down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, you stay smashing.